I'm waiting.
Everybody get quiet when we go live. Why is that? What do we wait? Why can't we go live?
And we're live! I hope. I don't know. I can't tell.
I don't see the live thing. I don't see the live thing.
They keep changing. Like, we had a countdown before, then we're like, now it will be live immediately. Now there's a pause, and I wait for the button. We're live! SPSM, how are you? We're so glad that you're with our chat tonight. We have got a wonderful person back with us. We're very, very excited to have Dr. Melissa Pinto with us tonight. And of course, we have our favorite Dr. Bart Andrews with our IT guru, Tony Wood here, and we'll introduce them just momentarily. Please do chat on Twitter using the hashtag SPSM. Get to Tony Wood at @ADWWW. And let him know if you have questions or if you're noticing trends in the Twitter conversation. And Dr. Pinto and Dr. Bart Andrews and I will do our best to get to you. And now, without any further ado, let's say hi to Dr. Melissa Pinto. Everyone, hey! Look at that! Say hi to the people. Where can they find you on Twitter?
They can find me at MD_Pinto, Pinto.
Now, you are chatting tonight about avatars and virtual technology and how you have done some wonderful research about improving people's access to healthcare and also, like, surprisingly, finding that it reduces depression significantly, correct?
Yes, it was a small pilot, but that's what our initial findings showed.
Pretty sexy. Now, what not everybody knows about you, but what I particularly love about you, especially since we were talking about avatars, is your incredible command of Google effects. Show us some effects.
Here you go. I like these. These are my new favorite.
I do love those. Those do look good on you. So tonight, what we're asking for folks to do is tweet out memes or pics of some of their favorite avatars, Google effects, stickers, things that they just really find fun about using social media. Because Dr. Pinto is going to be talking about how she uses these things that many of us find sort of fun to play with to do serious healthcare. At MD_Pinto, right?
MD_Pinto, yes.
And then at Dr. Bart Andrews. Actually, it's just at Bart Andrews, but it's Dr. Bart Andrews. He's back. Woo!
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Glad to be here. I'm in DuPont, Washington. I'm at right outside of the Army Air Force Lewis McChord Joint Command Base. So very excited, very cool to be here.
Every week lately, we seem to have you messaging in from a different military government sort of installation. Is there something about your secret life that you'd like to tell us?
Well, my secret life on the side, I'm working with Living Works and doing assist on military bases all across the country, and it's very cool. One of the things that's going on in the military, and I want to tout this because the Army has got this going on, and the Navy is now on board, and the Air Force will likely be next. Is they're really looking at suicide as a community health problem, and recognizing that anybody and everybody can help with suicide prevention, that we shouldn't rely on experts and mental health professionals, that will only get us so far, and so the military is doing that, and it's very cool stuff. And I'm really proud of our military, really proud of our armed forces for leading the way in suicide prevention. They've got the jump on folks.
Okay, yes, you're there on official business.
Official business.
Well, we're really, really excited. I hope that you guys are going to tweet out some of your favorite avatars and stickers and things. We all know that I love, for SPSM, the pirate hat. You'll also find me on Twitter using the Groucho glasses, and what we find is people really respond to this. And we're going to have, because we haven't talked a lot about using things like Second Life or virtual technology, so we're going to have Dr. Pinto come back on, tell us a little bit about herself, and maybe could you share with us the story of how you came to do this kind of research?
So I cannot take credit for this by myself because there's a whole team of people, but I did lead the mental health component of this project. So there is a video floating around on the internet, which I think gives you sort of the best view of the avatar-based program that was created by the team. So actually, this was piloted in both a mental health population, which was predominantly young adults who were of a minority, non-white status, and of low income. That was not purposeful. They're just the ones that responded to our research. The Avatar-based program was also piloted in a group that had chronic physical health conditions, which was hypertension, diabetes, and COPD and asthma. So I probably need to tell you a little bit of history of how we got where we got. So the which we call eSmart, Electronic Self-Management Resource Training, was actually developed from the ground up. It was not like used a platform that was already existing, and it was developed by using focus groups of individuals in Northeast Ohio, which where I was at the time. I'm in Atlanta now, and they developed the video game, which we refer to as eSmart. Everything down to what the characters look like, what they're dressed in, the virtual environment. So this took a lot of people to make happen. It took computer engineers, graphic artists, and just lots of people.
And let's take a pause to like describe this. So SPSM did tweet out some YouTube sort of showing the eSmart. But can you tell us sort of virtually what kind of space are people walking into? It's really showing them walking into a clinic and what happens, right?
Yeah, so it's a three-dimensional space, and it's modeled after a primary care environment, because a lot of times that's where the first line of care that an individual receives. They feel more comfortable going to their primary care than they would, say, the psychiatrist. So they walk into it. It's all, the environment is 3D, and the perspective from the user is from their first-person perspective. It's almost like if a camera is mounted on top of their head. It is not. They don't see them what they would represent as themselves on the screen. And they go in and they interact with the receptionist just like you would at a primary care provider office visit. And then they sit down and wait. They interact with a virtual coach, and that coach helps to coach them through talking about depression and interacting with the healthcare provider. So I think the user and the coach have a brief conversation out in the waiting room. At that point, then the person is called back, just like you would in a virtual primary care office. You walk down the hall back, you sit on the exam table, you get your blood pressure taken, the medical assistant asks you some questions, and then you wait again. So we tried to make this as similar as possible as a real life visit.
Why?
Because we feel like we want people to be prepared. We want them to feel comfortable and feel like that they can manage the situation in a virtual primary care office and not be surprised. So we even change the avatars that they interact with. There's one that looks like me and has my voice. There's men, there's different ones, different skin tones, different voices, because again, we want people to feel comfortable no matter what they encounter in a primary care setting or who it is, that they are able to manage that and convey what they need to their healthcare provider.
So this is really solving like a basic challenge, which is people, like it's helping them sort of like have a little bit of exposure to sort of lower their resistance to going like, I'm just going to, so before versus I call this number and then I don't know what happens.
Yeah, so it is, some of it is an exposure, and it's a simulation. So we hope that, it sort of evokes those same sort of emotions, because it is a 3D virtual environment. And, we did program, so we programmed all the avatars to behave certain ways. So sometimes they can kind of get curt with you. It's not that we agree that people need to be like that, but sometimes people encounter that in the real life setting. We want them to be able to manage that.
So you have that receptionist that's like not thrilled that you've come to sign in?
Yes, it's not always, but some of the responses vary. So you go in and you don't have, even if, let's say, Dr. Foreman, if you were to come in and you were to answer the same questions twice in the same way, you would not get an identical visit. So we have it programmed to where it varies, and that it's tailored. We also teach them a communication strategy that came from the focus groups. When the team was conducting the research with the focus groups, during one of the breaks, individuals started sharing what they thought were helpful strategies that helped them during their healthcare visits. It always happens when you don't ask the question and they give you the answer later, And so it was organized into something that we have currently that is in press publication called SBAR 3. S in healthcare, think of SBAR in a different way but than what I'm going to talk about here. But S stands for share your story. B stands for bring your background. A stands for ask for what you want and what you need. So at this point, we're taking even though the patient has been active in sharing their story and bringing their background, now we're really trying to empower them to ask the provider for something if they feel like they need it. And then there's 3 R's, and I'm going to try to remember them. Review the plan. So the healthcare provider is going to provide them with a plan during this interaction. So they review it and say, hey, I'm going to review the plan. Is it right for me? Because a lot of times the plan is not consistent with what the individual can do. So this is now the time to talk about it with the healthcare provider instead of taking a script or just walking out and having a plan that they're not going to be able to do at home. And then the last R is repeat the plan. So we want to make sure,
okay, there you go.
We want to make sure they're on the same page. So we teach them this strategy as well.
I'm sorry, you keep locking up, and then I keep thinking I'm going to help, and then you're totally fine. So I want to ask for Bart to sort of comment. So, I'm having a reaction, Bart, both as a person who is, behind the desk, as a provider, as people come in to see me, but, all of us are patients sometimes. And my experience as patients have really shaped how I like to provide care and how I think it should be done. As you're listening to Dr. Pinto really describe this sort of virtual world and what's happening, what are some of the thoughts that you have?
Well, I think it's amazing. I think one of the things, there's a bunch of stuff coming out now about how the medical field is lagging behind in digital and high-tech patient engagement strategies. We're not functioning like, look at the business world, look at online. Everybody's going online because that's where people are. And so the fact that Dr. Pinto is making these steps and connecting with folks and using technology to improve their experience, I think that's we're really focused on their experience, right? It's not just about, oh, well, you need to get better and here's how we're going to get you better. It's what's that experience like? What's it like for you? What are things that we can prepare you for? What can we, and this is the key point that I hear saying, what can we do differently to meet your needs? And I think having that mindset and using technology to do that is absolutely amazing. There was a great article posted this week about Generation Z. And I was tweeting about this earlier this week. And if we don't get up to speed, this new generation of kids born after 2000, or maybe it's 98, I forget where Generation Z starts, but they're a 95 maybe, but it's a different group, and they value things online more than they do the things that are happening around them in what we consider real space, right? So blending these two things and having them play off each other is just beautiful.
I do have 2 questions for Dr. Pinto, and based on some of the things that you're saying, there were 2 things that really stood out to me, and he's talking about Generation Z, which is, why do you think that low-income minority youth were really responsive to the invitation to participate in this study? Because we've actually have several folks for whom that's a real interest in messaging and an interest in SPSM. Like, where is that intersection? How did that happen?
So some of it relates to where I probably advertised for the study. So I advertised when I was in Cleveland, and this was similar to the study that was conducted by colleagues that are also part of the team for physical health, as we advertised in the interior bus ads. But I think, too, that some of the advertisements, I piloted the advertisements, several different reiterations with the population to make sure they were responsive to it. The advertisement said speak up and be heard, but that came out of the focus groups. Those are the words that they used. They wanted to speak up and be heard.
Whoa. Okay, this is really important. So how did you use messaging to more effectively recruit subjects? Because you're basically saying that you did sort of ABC, like we're going to do different iterations till we find the most effective message.
Right.
As opposed to we've agreed to one message, the IRBs approved it, and we're just going to stick with it no matter how few participants. What did you do?
So when I said I piloted, I didn't mean that I officially piloted with the population. I mean that I had a research team that was very diverse and of that age range, and so they tweaked it.
So, like, what did they say worked? Like, what were the do's and what were the things that didn't work?
So, okay, well, something else that I did. So I had someone that was helping me with the advertisement, but I felt like they just weren't hitting the mark. So I actually got on MTV and BET's websites to see, because I figured that the people that were advertising on there went ahead and already did all the expensive marketing research. And so
Brilliant! It's what I'm trying to tell everyone. No, do it. Say it. Sorry,
So I printed off some things, and I, from there, had them put out an advertisement, and it was like black and blue, and it had almost like graffiti lettering, and it had a long group of like shadow people, very indiscriminate. You couldn't tell who they were. And then in red, I think red and blue letters, it said "Speak Up and Be Heard." But I had my research team really kept a pulse on sort of the population for me. Like they were of that age, not quite exactly that demographic, but I had two African American girls on my research, a mixed girl, an African American girl, a Caucasian girl, and then I think, I'm trying to remember. But anyways, it was a diverse research team that could give me some perspective, basically.
And so what I'm going to say, what I really liked about this is you're engaging people in this and you're designing this. So I don't know why mental health does this in some of healthcare literacy. I'm just going to have that part of me that sort of twitches. But the truth is that a lot of times they aren't paying attention to the popular media and the things that people consume and interact with for their targeted group that they want to get a response from. And so, of course, you want to go to entertainment, whatever. You want to go to BET if that's your group. And you need to look because, I mean, we're serving people from a lot of different places, right?
Uh-huh.
Absolutely. So that's great. Then tell us more about like why you had a coach come meet them in the waiting room. Like, explain what that is.
Okay, so I should probably give a little idea about the sort of the study. It was a longitudinal study. It wasn't the first time. It wasn't just like a one-time intervention and then they were done. They would receive it once a month for 3 months, and it was every 4 weeks. So the coach gave a lot of coaching at the beginning, like to the participants. And there is a button that if they feel like that the participant's struggling with a communication or an interaction, they can actually call upon the coach and the coach will help them. Or if the coach can sense through the programming, I don't mean like sense, and there's not another person on the back side of this. When I say a coach, I'm talking about a pre-programmed avatar coach. So when the coach is sensing that the person's having trouble, they will appear and provide some coaching. Over time, it has been the program has been programmed to reduce the amount of coaching. And the idea is that the participant or the user will become more efficacious and gain some more self-confidence in their ability to communicate.
What goes wrong? So I'm going to switch to Bart. Bart, what do you think goes wrong when people try to use a healthcare system?
Well, I think lots of things go wrong when people try to use a healthcare system. And I think one of the biggest barriers that people run into a healthcare system is attitudinal. That in fact, in the healthcare system, we don't take a customer focus. We don't view the folks that we're coming to see as being the priority, as people with choice. We see ourselves as being they have to come to us. And we take this expert approach that they need us more than we need them. And I think it's a very different than what you see in businesses. When you look at places that do this well, it's when you put the customer and have a customer mentality, when it's their experience, their needs, that you're there to meet.
Bart's
been ingrained in the healthcare field. There are some places that are doing it, but when I was at National Council, I think it was last year, a couple years ago, there was a restaurateur that talked about, hey, if I ran my restaurant the way clinics run clinics, I'd go out of business, right? Nobody would come to me. And so that's one of the things that there's been this kind of, well, people are going to come to us no matter what, and they don't have that customer focus. I think this is really important that we have these conversations and take a customer mindset, an empowerment mindset, an experience mindset in delivering services.
And that was part of the emphasis, that started this project with the team. Is they initially thought they wanted to train healthcare providers, and then we just said, no, let's think about driving the interactions from the perspective of the user and what they need. So something else that I probably, even though that this is a sort of a rehearsal of a real visit, these individuals in the pilot got better without seeing a healthcare provider. So I'm still...
What?
So I'm still, because most of them were not seeing a healthcare provider for their depression, and so that's sort of my next step. Is I'm trying to replicate the study to see if I get the same findings, and then the other thing is to really drill down and figure out how we think the intervention works.
So what we think may have reduced depression, just doing a simulated virtual reality doctor visit, was it regression to mean, or did something happen with that actually the process of visiting the doctor and doing the SBAR3, right, which is saying your story, bringing your information, asking for what you want and need, and then reviewing your plan. There's the 3 R's, and I've already missed them. But
Okay.
And I'm going to say, as a patient, like I'm a very prepared patient. Like, I'm like, here it is, but
Right.
most patients don't come in, like my experience, and I don't know what BART is, and I don't know what yours is, but they don't come in going, I'm a very experienced patient, so I'm here to help make it easy for you to do your job.
Right. So we're not really sure, but the responses were pre-programmed. So we have some idea that maybe that people were being affirmed, or maybe not feeling lonely anymore, or maybe that this simulation may have provided them with a skill set to maybe not reach out to their healthcare provider, but instead somebody else that could provide them with support, right? Because you could still share your story with somebody. You could still sort of bring your background and ask people for what you want, what you need. Now, the 3 R's, I'm not so sure how that would work out, but it is possible that the skills that they learned in the simulation could have been applied in a different way, and we're just not quite sure yet how they're being applied. And so that's
validation, telling your story, and giving you skills for telling your story and asking for what you need for others might help people get well.
So that's sort of some of the things that we're speculating. We don't know at this point, but one of the things that I want to do in the next study is to ask people, how did you use what you did in eSmart? How did you use that? Like, even if it wasn't in a healthcare setting, like, what did you take from it that was useful? So that might give us some clues, because we know that people, if they can increase their social support, that tends to help reduce some depressive symptoms. And then the other thing is, people sometimes feel alone. And so if we have put a response on the screen that matches something that they have been feeling, then that in itself might relieve some stress and, have some validation that they're not the only ones feeling that way.
Bart, weigh in. She's just unpacked a whole bunch of stuff. Weigh in.
So I think some of the things that are really key here is the empowerment, right? And the sense that one of the things that we don't do, and this really ties in, I don't know if you guys saw this, but there was this recent study about, I'm going to go immunology, and about how people aren't doing vaccines, right? And the study was really discouraging because it showed that when doctors ask people whether they want the shot or not, people are less likely to get the shot than if the doctor says, okay, it's time for the shot, here, we're going to give you the shot, right? And so they showed that the success rate was so much higher, but it's because of these demand characteristics, and we don't think about questioning doctors, and we just kind of act like we don't know what we're doing, and if they say do something, do it. So that works great for increasing compliance, but what's the other message? That we're not empowering people, we're not engaging people, we're not letting them own the process. And I think one of the things that Dr. Pinto is really doing here is she's teaching people how to be experts at being a patient and how to be in charge of their health care. And that concept of self-agency, I think, applies very well to mental health care. When you look at one of the biggest barriers to accessing treatment, prejudice and discrimination are part of it, but the sense that I should be able to do this on my own is a huge piece of it. And I think that is tied to depression and to discrimination and prejudice as well. But this agency and coaching, access and be a self-agent while accessing help in other places. In digital media, and what we found is people are more willing to text and chat and call than to go in to see a clinic. People are going to be more willing to go online via an avatar than they are going to be to walk into a clinic. So here's a way to help them gain some sense of competency and expertise in helping themselves. I just think it's so powerful. I just applaud Dr. Pinto for what she's doing.
Thank you. The other thing is that, I'm sorry.
No, we have one follow-up question. I just wanted to make sure that we talk about this. What they're wanting to know on the Twitter feed is for you to talk about how many people participated in it's called eSmart, correct?
Yes, that's right. And I was actually
retention.
Yeah, I was actually going to look for that, and I cannot remember, but I can tell you that I just had a paper accepted on Friday, which I talk about all the different aspects of translation into practice. Things were like necessity, if the patients find it to be needed, if it's acceptable, sort of retention. I can tell you that it was equivalent, if not a little bit higher than in-person visits. So I forgot what the dropout rate was. I apologize. I cite this in the paper. It's going to be published in Perspectives in Psychiatric Care in the next few months. It's called
For mental health, for visits, the N is 1. So most people go to one visit and don't come back to the second.
Yeah, but it was, and I benchmarked it also against online CBT. So it was, yeah. I cannot remember exactly, so I don't want to quote. But
you can tweet it out later. So
okay.
here. So SPSM, this is what's great about social media. It's asynchronous. So we're having this conversation right now. If you want this message or tweet out to @MD_Pinto, she's going to find this and get this back to you. She's lovely.
Yeah, so we benchmarked it because we wanted to know. I mean, of course, I would like to have 100%, but, we want to know what sort of the standard is and if we can at least meet the standard, if not do a little bit better.
If you can get more people coming back for visit 2, it's like that's huge.
Right, exactly. Something else I just sort of wanted to add to, you had asked me about why people would access this, particularly African American women. And we know that that's sometimes a hard group to capture. But, I think even CBT and online CBT, it seems like therapy, and this might provide, and I'm not saying it's a treatment at this point because it's not a treatment, but this type of application in the future, if we were to find that it could be used as an adjunct or which would be like an add-on, okay, or that it could be used as a standalone therapy, that it's not really viewed as a therapy, like in people.
So, for example, if you wanted one application, and then this is like the bowl is getting excited. But basically, for example, a clinic, most people go and they look up places before they visit there, and especially Facebook more than any other platform. So if a clinic had a Facebook page, they could put a link to this, like visit our clinic virtually, try interacting with our staff, learn a little bit about to help you get ready for your first visit, and have it something that people could get from a mobile phone. And then suddenly you really are capturing and preparing a population that historically we've missed when it comes to health literacy.
Right. That and the fact that they might just be more, because it's a game, it's sort of like a gaming platform, that it doesn't seem like it's a treatment. It's almost like disguised, if that makes sense.
It's just fun. I don't know. I mean, treatment does not have to be horrible.
Yeah, and I don't want to say that it's a treatment. I just want to say like the utility of it.
Speaking of which, let me tell you, we're at the minute. Can I tell you? So this is. Do you remember this?
I remember the bowl. I was thinking about the bowl earlier.
The bowl.
Right.
The bowl of interesting questions. By the way, wants to know what color your nail polish is.
It is a purple.
Nice.
It's very pretty.
Thank you.
I like it. Is it from the OPI Hawaii or is it a different purple?
No, it's I think it's Essie.
Ooh. So this is again an open-ended question. You can just give your answer. You can elaborate. It says Valentine's or Galentine's?
Valentine's.
Tell us more.
I love Valentine's.
I know you had the hearts all over the top of your head. Can you make that happen? Can you show people? I can barely make it work. Let me see if I can do it.
Tony did that to me earlier, but here we go. I have to adjust my screen.
So, do you want to elaborate or just weigh in?
No, we'll just leave it there.
Okay, well, I like it. We'll just leave it there. How about you, Bart? Valentine's or Galentine's?
Yeah, what's the second? I can't hear the second one. What?
Galentine's.
Valentine's or what?
Galentine's.
What's Galen?
I
don't even know what Galentine's.
But it swaps the V for a G.
Got it. Well, here's my take on Valentine's Day. I believe it was created by the military-industrial complex as a means of controlling society through subversive mechanisms like chocolate, flour, and candy purchases for no apparent reason other than to drive the economy.
I feel like if that's what it takes for me to get chocolate and flowers, way to go, industrial complex.
That's good. Yeah. There goes freedom for everybody, so you can have chocolate and flowers. That's good.
It's very. I'm an easy creature. No, I'm gonna have to say, as much as I really do love Valentine's, I'm gonna say Galentine's because men come and go, but you have your girlfriends. Like you can always celebrate with your friends, right? That's what I'm gonna say. And I say this having been in a relationship for a really, really long time, and I have had a great Valentine, but I have to say, like the sort of the whole Amy Poehler, like she takes her friends out for like brunch on the 13th of February, and they celebrate Galentine's, and I have to say I don't hate that. All right, we're hitting 9:15, so this is where we want to ask you a little bit, Dr. Pinto, about this is where you get to just sort of intellectually play, and you don't have to speak on behalf of anybody but yourself. But
Okay.
if you were applying some of this eSmart or the SBAR3 or any of some of these strategies that you developed, because for those of you who don't remember, Dr. Pinto has her background in nursing and public health, correct?
Nurse, yeah, my background is in nursing, but I do community-based research, so intervention research in public, like a public health sort of context, yes.
I'm sorry if I don't get, I'm trying to sort of generally, because we have such a broad audience.
Yep.
So if we think of suicide as just as a public health issue and as the 10th leading cause of death, and we were trying to just sort of generate system interventions, not therapy interventions, but how we might change our system to be more effective with folks at risk of suicide, how could you apply some of these ideas or strategies, like if you were just dreaming things up?
So I think part of it is the teaching of, I mean, I really think, and I thought about actually about application, to a suicide problem. And part of that is increasing comfort with the healthcare provider and building that alliance with the healthcare provider. So I certainly think that some of the discussion, could be changed to where it's more appropriate for someone that would need to talk more to their healthcare provider about their symptomatology, specifically suicide. So remember, since this is an electronic intervention, we can change the avatars to look however we want. We can change the voices. We could even put them in a different language. We could change the backgrounds. Like, everything is sort of changeable. So, I mean, I definitely think there's applicability with the SBAR3, maybe a little adaptation of that, as well as teaching them how to talk to their healthcare provider. And that means even talking about risk.
So, this is a really great idea, and this wasn't where I thought you would go with this, and this is better. So as I was preparing for this, I was like thinking about, I always sort of think ahead about how this might go. I mean, what you're saying is really important, because a lot of people like saying, I feel like dying, and I feel like taking my own life because I don't want to live. Or maybe it's not that I don't want to live, but this pain is horrible, and
Right.
I'm very afraid you're not going to believe me, you're not going to take me seriously, you're going to dismiss me. And there is a chance that you might,
Right.
in the healthcare system. I mean, what you're telling me is your technology prepares them for provider not being perfect.
Right. And the other thing is that, this is a very non-threatening environment. So people are fearful when they go in and they interact with a healthcare provider, because it is a real person, and a lot of times there's a perceived power imbalance, or particularly when individuals have less privilege, that they're intimidated. So I think that this is a way to help them practice in an environment that is considered low risk. If they mess up, nobody knows, nobody sees. It's in a virtual environment, and they can practice until, they feel more comfortable, essentially.
So what about programming your coach to talk, like, help people, say their story and bring their history about, especially related to suicide risk? Oh
yeah, we could do. I mean, that's a pretty easy fix, to be honest with you.
Bart, what do you think about this?
Well, I mean, the implications, I think, are incredible, because one of the things I've been running into when things don't go well with a therapist, a mental health professional, a doctor, people are not empowered to do much until something really bad happens, and then we start talking to attorneys, right, or complaints against an institution. How do we coach people? And I think part of this is we've really put doctors on such a high pedestal in this country. We've elevated them to this status that they're not supposed to be questioned. And let's face facts, I love doctors, but they don't do well when we question them. They don't handle it well. And when I see doctors struggle the most is when things aren't going well with a patient, and then they tend to use coded language about the patient and actually make it more difficult for any progress to be made.
And they don't want to get well. That's what they say.
We tolerate a level of prejudice and discrimination among our own peers. I just heard of a psychiatrist that openly tells people at this hospital, I won't see borderlines, people who are suicidal, or med seekers. But this is not unusual. This is not. I'm going to say this, and I'll say it publicly. Not only do I think this is usual, I think this happens more often than it doesn't happen. And we that. And how do people approach, how do they learn to challenge, confront, or even have a crucial conversation with a healthcare provider where they're already feeling one down and disempowered? So being able to set up scenarios where people can practice that is key. It's key.
And providing them with a framework to put it in of how to sort of say it, but in their own way, but a way that could be heard, by a healthcare provider, because it's the way we're sort of receiving it. We're used to receiving information anyways.
Yeah, and I'm thinking even that you could even program the doctors to say exactly the things that people are afraid their doctors are going to say, because so my experience. Being someone who, like, my favorite patient help are those folks with those problems, because I feel like that's where there's the most risk and the most potential to do good, and I also feel like I sort of get that it hurts, right? But so my patients come in, and they come in and I know that they do, preparing for me to be a different doctor, and I kind of can almost hear what they're getting ready for me to say, and like trying to stop me from saying, and I always have to say, that's not coming out of my mouth. Like we don't have to spend 15 minutes of you giving me a story just to convince me you need help. Why don't we just assume that I believe you right now?
Right.
And we can move on.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
That's crazy. Why don't you just assume that I'm going to believe you? So you don't have to prove anything to me. You can I'll just believe you. So let's give that a shot. And that's actually more my experience, that patients come in ready to not be heard or not be believed. Right. And I'm sort of always astonished, but maybe that's the common experience, and maybe we can help doctors be better, but maybe patients have the most motivation to change our behavior, right?
Right, and the other thing is I sort of feel that, and I don't have any evidence for this, but I sort of feel that once they start to feel sort of self-efficacious in one area, that this may trickle over to other behaviors or other areas that could be helpful for them to manage their illness.
Yes.
And I probably should say that, and I sort of briefly talked about this. I know that this is a mental health focus, but we do know that there's a high comorbidity between all these mental health disorders and physical health issues.
Correct.
And the other test of the intervention, we were able to show a reduction in blood pressure that was clinically significant by 10 points over 6 months, systolic and diastolic, among adults. So we feel like that there's something to this, whether it be SBAR or just the interaction or the way we have it programmed. We feel that there's something to this because we've seen therapeutic benefit in two different populations now. One, a physical health condition, which was hypertension, and now depression.
So I just want to ask, did I hear you correctly that people just do the avatar and then a few months later their blood pressure's lower?
So we were able to see over 6 months, yes, that their blood pressure went down by 10 points, systolic and diastolic, and those findings are
among a targeted high-risk group with people who have early age blood pressure and diabetes issues.
Yeah, they had hypertension, yeah, and they were mostly minority. We call it socially and medically disenfranchised groups. So, yeah, so we feel like there's something to this.
And I'm going to give a shout out to Sanford James, who always keeps us honest, and to Add Indigenous X, and to Coach Charlotte, and several other folks who really do champion on SPSM to have us really talk about culture and ethnicity and about how technology differs. And I mean, what you're hearing right here from Dr. Pinto is that this seems to be something that was an intervention that was specifically appealing to this community and effective.
And it was developed by them. So.
Just hit all of the things, right?
Right. It was developed with using focus groups of medically and socially disenfranchised individuals. So these were individuals from the LGBTQ and immigrants and so individuals from minority groups developed it.
So I'm going to turn the same question to Bart. Mine's getting a little blown here, I have to tell you. So Bart, as you're listening to Dr. Pinto, what innovative thoughts, if you were I could play with this technology and do whatever I wanted, what ideas come to mind?
Well, I mean, we're doing it right now. So what we've created an avatar-based treatment engagement system for suburban, urban youth in the St. Louis area. Actually, right in the area where in the Ferguson area is one of our core areas that we're focused on. And some of the pushback we got is that these youth will not want to engage with technology in this way. And I said, that's just not true. And we actually got focus groups together, met with youth, and they loved the idea. We originally thought we were going to struggle to get 100 pilot participants, and it looks like we're going to blow that out of the water. What's really cool is we're trying to create a virtual healthcare marketplace where youth can get their feet wet, kind of like what Dr. Pinto was talking about, where they can test it out, see what it's like, and they can engage with a lot of different providers to see what it would be like, and then engage face-to-face services as needed. But we are building it to be able to deliver actual services in an avatar-based environment. The cool thing of this is that we ran this by attorneys. We're able to get a release information and an informed consent where when the parents sign informed consent, all the providers are on there. So the youth, in theory, can go to the marketplace and go see this provider or go see that provider, touch base with them, see what it's like. Obviously, there's going to be the parents will have to be roped in, even though we have consent. There'll be follow-up. But for them to be able to pick and choose and not have to leave their house, right? They'll be able to walk around in this virtual environment, and I want to go check out this provider and see how they treated me. I'll go check out this provider. No harm, no foul. If they don't like how they interact with, they go try somebody else. And our goal here, we're very early in the project. It's up and running. We're working on getting, we're soliciting pilot program members right now, but that we could add all the providers in the community in here. Everybody would have a storefront. Youth could actually go in and solicit services and at least get the ball rolling on their own in this anonymous environment. Now, they're anonymous to each other and in the marketplace or in the world, so to speak, but we know who they are. So there is a vetting process. We know who they are and stuff like that. There's an orientation process. But the potential here is amazing that we layer services. It isn't all face-to-face. It isn't all telephone. It isn't all avatar. For some people, it might be. For some people, they might only want face-to-face, but we meet them where they need, and we make multiple channels of engagement. The more channels we have, the more folks we're going to hit, the better their experience, and the more choice they have, the more success we're going to have. So I think empowerment is the key. I'm just going to keep saying empowerment until people are sick of it.
Yeah.
What do you think, Melissa?
I agree. I agree totally. I think there's something about activating patients, but I just don't know what that something does, like how it trickles down and to what extent. You know, can we activate a patient in one area and they will become activated in others? So I just don't quite know the answer to this yet. So I'm perplexed.
So Karis is pointing out, and you know Karis with a K.
Yeah. Hi, Karis.
Yay! And so a couple of things. She's saying this would be a great program to really, that the coach is a lot very similar to peer support, and so that peer support could be using this to get people ready to interact with doctors or to help them. I mean, this would be great for problem solving, just like Marshall and Twirl and Swirl, several people saying, but my doctors do treat me bad sometimes, and saying that may happen, so we're going to help you sort of with some exposure that it's not going to be so bad, and there's some skills that you can use to get your needs met. I love that. And you might want to respond to how like if someone wanted to do this and they wanted to use like a peer support model, how could you change the program or change the technology? How could you imagine them doing that?
So, I mean, what's really nice is, you know, particularly, so I don't know a whole lot about, you know, services across the United States, but I would imagine that services are more difficult in rural areas, including peer support. And so this would be a way to where we could potentially provide peer support, a simulated peer support that doesn't even have to be like using a real person, that would be able to reach individuals that are in areas to where they would have less access. So I see that's one way. The other way is you could actually just change the environment to where you know, that it would just be nothing but peer support. And it could be, I mean, we can make the environment whatever. We could make it their home, you know? We could make it.
Karis also pointed out that you could use the same kind of technology to help people practice what it would be like to make a crisis call, because one of the things that happens, and this is where I thought we would go, and I'm feeling, Karis, thank you for having the same idea that I had, so I didn't feel so dumb. But, and Dr. Schmitz will, if you ever see him, he will have people practice calling the Veterans Crisis Line in his office with him, because there's so much fear about using your safety plan. And so you could have people practice activating their safety plan or practice talking with someone in a crisis. And maybe, I mean, Bart actually, I mean, this is sort of his bread and butter, right, Bart? So what are some of the common fears that users have when they use a crisis line or a helpline?
So, I mean, for us, one of the big fears is that you're going to call the police or make me go to the hospital, right? That you're going to make a choice for me that I don't want to make right now. That's one of the biggest fears. Now, what's interesting is people are a lot more comfortable making a phone call than they are coming in, right? So the barrier to make a phone call, because now some of we have a lot of different accounts at Behavioral Health Response. So there's a lot of different things that we do, but our crisis accounts, people don't have to give any more than a name they want to be called by or no name. So that anonymity is very empowering. So the barrier to reach out and call is lower. Texting, when kids text us or online chat, the barrier is lower. So they're more willing to disclose, there's more safety. But there's a lot of concern, particularly youth focus, there's a lot of concern about getting parents involved, which we get. Sometimes we have to get parents involved. So those are things, but when we look at things that people are concerned about, it's around control. It's about losing their anonymity, losing their privacy, and having choices made for them that they don't want made, right? So those are really big barriers, and barriers that we need to validate and recognize, because there are some real world limits that mental health professionals run into when they're doing this kind of work. The other thing that people really struggle with is getting sent to referrals where they're not going to get picked up for services. That's an ongoing in mental health. So think about it in mental health, and somebody actually commented on this out. In the Twitter feed about how one of the problems with customer service that's so challenging is many clinics don't have enough slots for all the people coming in, right? Which generates a tremendous amount of stress for the providers. They want to help people, they can't help people. So mental health is simply underfunded, and there isn't enough. Even if you have third-party insurance, I don't know about where you guys are at, but to see a psychiatrist, even with good third-party insurance in the St. Louis area, you're talking about a 3 to 4 week wait. Right?
Oh,
that's when it's fair, right?
Average is 6 weeks to 2 months around here.
So think about that for a minute. You need to see somebody, and you call and you reach out for help. You go through this disclosure. You go through the pain of letting somebody else know about some of the most intimate details of your life, and then you're like, well, you can see somebody in 6 to 8 weeks. Well, imagine what that feels like for the person. So with things like so those are huge barriers, and they're real barriers, and those are things that people are afraid of when I'm ready for help and help can't be available for me.
Right.
What are you thinking as you're hearing this? Because boy, do we want to get you excited about suicide prevention, Dr. Pinto.
I'm always excited about suicide prevention, honestly, and I think it's just I would love to have collaborators in that area because that is not my area of expertise. But I definitely think that, we could teach everything from rehearsal to even addressing some of the concerns that Bart just pointed out. So remember that, communication, although we're trying to empower individuals and teach them skills, we can also provide them with information to sort of minimize some of those common fears. Without really outwardly saying that you might be scared about this, but we're going to tell you anyways. So we've done that some in eSmart. We've done some affirmation statements as well as some information giving, and we can actually program it to be tailored. That's what we've done with eSmart. So if there's a certain concern, that it keeps kind of going down that path to provide more information and kind of do some questioning, and then however the person responds, then to give an additional either information or more tailored information. So we can certainly do that with any.
So, follow up to that, at M. Loxton, Matthew Loxton, who's a pal of mine, is working on a project about effective system research, system design, and you can respond to him later, but he's asking if you'd be willing to be interviewed as part of his data gathering process for this process improvement project related to healthcare and accessing clinics. He'd like to chat with you. I would like to point out something that I have experienced. Anytime you want to do the exact same project but use the word suicide. So if, say we wanted to design the exact same project about a crisis call, and I would like for you and Bart to react to this, because I think this is actually one of the most critical barrier issues to getting this kind of work done, which is everyone's totally okay as long as we're talking about depression and anxiety with learning this exact set of skills. But if you wanted to teach this set of skills to folks to talk about suicide, my guess is what you will find is that the reviewers, for reasons that they could not articulate to you and don't even realize that they're doing, become a little anxious and irrational. And they can't even tell you why. They're afraid that if you just show people information about talking about suicide, or talk to people about their suicide, just even to gather information, that this is going to be harder to get approved. And I'm wondering what you and Bart think about that. Have I gone too long? Was this the Kane moment, Bart?
No, well, we don't want Tony to use that sound because that was really not. I mean, I think there's folks that would be interested in funding that. I do. I think it just depends. It depends on who the funder is.
Mhm.
I think a lot of folks, when suicide comes up, they shy away big time, right? If they're not, and I think that's one of the things that we see a lot of is there's a certain group of organizations that are very specific to suicide funding, and then there's a group of organizations that kind of do general healthcare funding. And I think the general healthcare funders are really often very, very nervous about funding suicide-specific projects.
Mhm.
I mean, that's anecdotal, but that's been my experience that it's one of those things that's there's still a lot of prejudice, discrimination, and fear around doing suicide projects, and particularly with youth, right? Does everybody remember Teen Screen? I don't know if you guys are you're old enough to remember Teen Screen.
Yeah.
That was a great program, and it was really attorneys and fear about what the liability was that shut that whole thing down, right? Nobody wanted to touch it with a 10-foot pole. But I think the culture, I think the landscape is changing, and so I think it's much more doable than it ever has been. I'm not sure if I answered the question, but
The other thing is, when I was in Washington, D.C. last year, I participated in a roundtable that had the FDA and some of the other federal organizations, and they were talking about dissemination, potential regulation of this type of technology. You know, the horse is out of the barn as far as technology. Pretty much anybody can develop an app. Anybody can, I mean, and so my question to them was, where is the safety net for people? Where is the information going? So those are sort of I see the barrier less about suicide and more about safety of participants using an electronic interface, and they don't like the fact that they're not having necessarily the face-to-face contact right away. And the other thing is about where's the information going, that is it secure? That's where I'm finding, and that's the reason why I wrote a paper about it.
yeah. In suicide and life-threatening behavior, there's a recent article that just came out about online suicide research, and the evidence on that was very supportive of it as a safe and effective reading.
Right.
So I don't have the citation, but it was in the most recent article that was released, and it was well done, very detailed, and so I think there's a lot more support for this. So I think the time is right for this sort of thing.
Yeah, I think the tide is changing, but they really want you to speak to this. And really, really, that was part of the reason why I had told you that the paper that's going to be published in Perspectives in Psychiatric Care, I talk about the safety of it, both for the data and for the intervention itself and its safety. So I think that they're starting to really not crack down, but really raise some questions about this. And, mental health is always sensitive, and they're worried about risk. But that's where I sort of see the barriers, is because we haven't quite ironed that out in the fact that, like I said, the horse is out of the barn, that now we're trying to kind of catch up.
Correct. I like that. And of course,
so
I'm going to say that there's all this risk of not doing this research. And so in the middle of saying that the infestation risk that something's going to be different, it's the 10th leading cause of death. People are dying every day. There's a risk for saying no or making the research take a long time. So
Absolutely.
2 things. We got 2 things before we get to final thoughts. Melissa, the time's almost up.
Can't believe it.
I know. So 2 things. I want to do a shout out to @SocialWorkPodcast, Jonathan Singer, for the screenshots of captions of me. You have now made Bart Andrews the happiest man on Twitter tonight. I don't know if you caught that in the feed. And it's time for. There was one more thing. Oh, everybody! There's a hashtag. NIDA News @NIDA News. Tweet them. Hashtag. Score Pinto. This incredible research needs to get more funding. Melissa, great thing.
Score Pinto.
Let @NIDA News know that we want Pinto's research done. Hashtag Score Pinto. I don't know why you think this is dirty, Andrews. I don't know what life you've lived that sounds dirty, but now I want to know. It's time for last call for bowl of interesting questions. It says, what is your perfect avatar and why?
Oh.
And please, by the way, all you folks on Twitter, please feel free to answer these. I love going back and reading.
So I like avatars, and I wish our system was more flexible, the one that we're piloting right now, but I like avatars that allow people to make as many changes as possible. And when we do focus groups of youth, a lot of the avatar-based software and apps out there let youth customize a tremendous amount. And look at what youth are doing today. They customize themselves with tattoos and body piercings and the clothes they wear and haircuts. That level of control is really powerful, and in a technological format also very powerful. So the perfect avatar for me would be one that I could customize to a really high level. And I really do. My avatar online is really, it looks like me. I like mine to look like me. Some people go the exact opposite, but I like mine to look like me.
Customizable and identifiable. How about you, Dr. Pinto?
Ooh.
I agree. So particularly for youth, I mean, for me, I'd probably do something that looks sort of like me with some adjustments. But, you know, particularly for youth, I think it's a way for self-expression. And sometimes I think I would rather them, you know, practice self-expression on an avatar than go out and do some other things that are concerning. But for me, you know, I might put a pink streak in my hair or do something a little different, you know, that I may not do in real life. But I think that mine would be like Bart's, that would be highly customizable. Probably look like me, but a little edgier.
I have to say, like, I remember, what were those things called back in the day before we had fancy electronic gadgets? When we went on a car ride, you would get sort of the page with the little plastic levels of, like, sort of stickers that you could peel off and put on all the stuff. Like, you know, like the hair or the clothing or whatever. Mm-hmm. I like the highly customizable, and what I like is when you have avatars that you can easily change, so it doesn't take, like, a lot. So if I feel a little different today, I can sort of switch it up.
Right.
I think that my avatar has to have nail polish. I'm gonna weigh in on that heavily.
It definitely does.
I think the avatars need manis, possibly petties. I don't know. Yeah. I'm just telling you this because let me tell you, on my daughter's apps, all of her little avatar for little games and things like that, they have all this junk, and mental health needs to be swanky.
Yeah. Oh. Hey, man.
Tweet that. Mental health, get swanky.
Let's not do swanky. I don't know. I'm
gonna say swanky, but I'm old, so that's what I say. And Dr. Bill Schmitz tells you, Bart Andrews, that your avatar needs a pocket square.
I would love to have an avatar with a pocket square. I love pocket squares, silks, whatever. I love them.
Pocket Square of the Month Club. I'm telling you. So we're getting to the last couple minutes. It's really time for final thoughts. Like, after you've listened to this whole discussion in a couple of sentences, what's your take-home message? Ooh, silence.
Are you talking to me, or are you asking Bart?
Any of that. I just wait for someone to respond, and I click on the camera. Is that a cricket? Did you make a cricket? You made a cricket!
Tony.
Oh, did Tony do
Tony
it?
do a cricket.
I don't know how. It's like magic.
I did it. They weren't ready for your question at all.
All right. My takeaway message was, one of the things I didn't even think about was this idea of using the avatar as kind of a pre-treatment exposure and exploration and empowering piece, right? So that was something that I'm going to take back. And in terms of collaborating, Melissa, I would love to collaborate with you and get you in touch with our program manager, because I think there's a lot that we could learn from you and the experience you've had. So I'd love to do that. And I'm just so glad that there are other folks that are taking chances with technology and meeting our folks where they're at, finding a way to meet their needs instead of, trying to find a way to squeeze them into what we do. And I think that's really cool. So that's my big takeaway.
I like that takeaway. How about you, Dr. Pinto?
So I guess that my takeaway is the fact that really thinking about, kind of piggybacking what Bart just said, but really thinking about the needs of our patients. And even the needs of our patients are changing. The needs of the adult patients may be different than the needs of our younger patients, or even our generation, I think you call them Z. So really, sometimes when I'm interviewed, I'll say that these kids are wired, and they'll ask me questions about, interacting with technology, will that make them feel more isolated or worse? Really, I think it just depends on the use of technology, and really thinking about how can we best use technology to meet the needs of this generation of young people, because they are our future, 100% of our future, actually.
And I'm gonna check in with Tony. Tony, you've been reading the feed. Any final thoughts from looking at the feed and from hearing the comments?
I think everybody's really excited about the sort of concept that these services can be delivered this way, and the many different implications it has for pretty much every area. Also, Jonathan Singer's screenshots are hilarious.
Jonathan Singer is going to break the internet with my face. So we're at the last minutes. This is my final thought. NIH, we need this kind of research. Mental health needs a facelift. We need to be swankier. We need to try new things so that we can have better results. So I'm going to say my final thought is #ScorePinto.
And can I say one more thing? And Tony's I think he might really agree with this. So industry can move a lot faster than scientists on this stuff because they don't have to go through the grants and the review and then.
Yeah.
And so we need to find a better process. Otherwise, by the time we move, we're going to be so behind. The technology is going to be outdated. We need to capitalize on technology to move our technology into the scientific realm so we can get it done. Otherwise, industry is going to pass us up, and sometimes, the product may look nice, but it really may not be effective, helpful, theory-based, or any of that stuff. So,
we need more of folks like #ScorePinto to do this kind of research. We need to find more of it, and it needs to go faster. The process needs to move quicker so that innovative young minds in mental health can do projects that work that keep up with the speed of change and communication. #ScorePinto! Everybody, you've wasted another hour. #SPSM. Find us on Twitter at SPSM. Go to our website at www.spsmchat.com. Find Dr. #ScorePinto! And
this is crazy. That's crazy.
At MD_Pinto, Dr. Andrews at Bart Andrews, Tony Wood, our fabulous production manager at ADWWW, and as always, do talk with me. Find me, April Foreman, on Facebook, at Doc Foreman on Twitter. If you have an idea, let me know. Yes.
You can find me at Emory, mdpinto@emory.edu.
MD Pinto, ScorePinto, and Emory.edu. Thank you so much. Like the video on YouTube, put comments below, subscribe to us, and we will see you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.